this should be an embarrassment. And I think we need to take back, just like they hire an advisor for the construction, right? They go out and hire a consulting firm to advise them on the construction. In essence, that's what we're saying. We need advice. And in particular, I'm interested in, because they're not interested, from what I've seen of their behavior, in maintaining this plant. They want new toys. And I think they had a chance to do for $2 million. They had a chance to do it. That was a mess. You mean this is nothing to brag about.
I'm not gonna argue about just
And the process.
basically there's the data that tells you technically
That's
that the
fine.
plan is running fine. And
I can show you a refinery that has great data just like that and it needs to be shut down. And just because it's running that way means you have really good operators. That doesn't mean it's not a refinery that's about to go.
then we need to
Okay.
keep hiring good operators
Yeah.
like Chris.
We've had a good discussion.
Well, I think there's two.
Do you have any idea how much money this would cost?
I would think that 50,000 would probably be it.
Of an independent consultant.
To hire a
Who
third
would
party.
this person report to?
Well, they'd have to report to Eric
Okay.
because, in other words, we'd have a committee of 3 technical people. They don't have to be wastewater engineers or, people are basically are used to bidding projects and working with consultants and, people like that and work with their.
Not that cheaply, they would have to get a ton of historical information from the operator.
Well,
Yes,
I don't know. I would think that they could go out there and if they're in that business, they could take a pretty good, quick perusal of that plant. Cause they probably designed them and build them and they could take a pretty quick look and if,
so your parameters would be to have what would it take to get this, to keep this plant in place and running for 50 years?
no,
25.
25.
25. But the other is 50 though.
Well, Hughes,
Oh, I just trying to,
no, I'm, in the private world, in the profit making business, you never go beyond 20 or 25 years on profitability because the discounted value at 25 years from now is nothing. So, that's why I say 25 years, who knows what's going to happen. 25 years ago, we didn't have MBR, right? So, you don't know what's going to happen in 25 years.
I think I'm kind of new on the block here also. I just find it hard to believe that we just authorized SCRA to spend money to hire a firm to evaluate what you haven't been satisfied with. And they've heard the concerns that have been presented by this board and others. And yet here we are saying, but we're not going to trust you. So we're going to go ahead and hire somebody else on top of that. I mean, that just doesn't make anything from an ethical standpoint to me. I mean, why the hell did you even vote to allow them to do that if you're going to say, we're not going to trust you, so we're going to hire somebody else to see if we can get what we want to get?
I'll be honest
I
with
mean,
you.
that's what I'm hearing. I haven't been involved in all the meetings, but I'm just sitting here saying, I don't know why you voted for that then.
Obviously, remember the red line on that document? This item number, the first item, the red line, we had to argue to get that line put on this document. Right? They were not going to consider the cost of maintaining the new plant until
But they did.
They did.
I mean, so, but what you're saying
Then we
is, you
stick
give
with
me.
the second line that we may have to, even though I'm not an expert, even
But
though.
they are.
Well, then that's fine.
Yeah, you're not going
I
to.
sat there and looked at the $2 million study, right? And I found that wanting. I found this wanting. And, the analysis of freshwater pipeline, I find that wanting. And, they're the providers. I understand that. You know what I mean? And we have to work with them. But I think there needs to be some checks and balances on this that we haven't had in the past. And I understand your logic, which you said. But I'll tell you, I've looked through the technical assessment in great detail. to the old 10-year plans in great detail. I got a 60-page PowerPoint on it. And I'm concerned that we need to have both eyes open in this process. And
But why don't we pull the repair in place option from that one and move it over to here if you want to do that? Why have two repair in places, other than the trust factor, I guess, but that seems like a waste of
Well,
money.
part
to
of the
me.
problem is these came together.
it came to the,
Oh, here we are.
Together at the same, well, they came together on the agenda at the same time. I put it on the agenda last time. They put this on the agenda last time. So, it's kind of,
Whatever, but
Yeah.
Why don't you just take this and give it to them and have them say, this is the data we have and include this in your study?
what are you talking
I
about?
mean, well, I mean,
No, basically somebody's got to go out just like they did here. The $50,000 report, they went out there and said, okay, this, and this, it has to be replaced or repaired. And it's going to cost $33 million to keep it running, or they said 18 months, which was ridiculous.
Since the conclusion of trustee Maggart's presentation, we've had 20 minutes of heated discussion. And the message was well delivered. And thank you for participating. I don't know where we go from here. Brian, you got any ideas? Eric, do you have any ideas?
Chew on it for the month. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to the discussion, and part of me thinks, well, would it be more efficient to have this report prepared by this separate engineering firm that's supposed to be brought in and highly credentialed to do a study, have the decision matrix prepared like what we talked about, and then see what the report comes back with and what our decision matrix comes to. And maybe if you want validation, because what if it comes to repair in place? Well, would you have still spent the money to go and do that? Maybe you wait and have, if you want a second set of eyes, you wait, see what comes through the decision matrix and have that validated by a separate engineering firm just to feel the extra comfort. And I'm just kind of thinking about this as we're going through the discussion. But the concern is the engineers, which I think Ed mentioned in his presentation, that there will be a separate request for qualifications for whoever would be designing and building it. Wouldn't necessarily be who's doing this study. So the concern, I get what you're saying about cost plus and, an incentive to boost up the cost. But if they're not necessarily going to be the contractor, that could cut it.
It's my understanding these people are strictly going to be consulting, and they might end up getting involved in the bid process. Is that right, Ed?
The firm that we're talking about doing.
No, I'm talking about this company you're hiring. They're not going to be involved in anything in the design or.
They said they were not interested in pursuing design.
So that may cut against the bias that you're.
Well, that was a big problem with the other consultant.
So
Is
perhaps
they had a bias to
yeah,
a new plan.
that's
Whereas if this company is, all they're gonna do is present a report and then we're not gonna see them again. So
I didn't say that.
well, in other words,
I said they aren't going to pursue design services.
okay. Or construction management or,
I didn't say that.
okay. Well, then construction management on a new plant is where you make your money.
So may I ask a question? Has SJRA directed Freeze and Nichols to form a specific conclusion concerning their studies?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We've asked them to evaluate the data and render their professional opinion.
okay.
General Manager Peterson, anything to add?
not at this time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr.
We're
I
gonna-
got one more comment. Mr. Lincoln made a good point, is that I'd like to know how many municipalities or any kind of MUDs or anybody that actually has gone out and junked a plant and built a new one as opposed to repair in place. I know they're up and down Spring Creek and Cypress Creek and San Jacinto River. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of wastewater treatment plants. And it'd be interesting to see if any of these ones that are getting to be 50 years old, they're junking them.
Very good.
Comment.
Thank you, sir. If we can conclude that discussion, We're moving to agenda item number 12. Attorney Brian Yates.
Come on, Ryan.
You've just barely gotten started, Brian. Okay.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So maybe I missed it, but I saw that there was one of the one of the civil suits got a hand, opinion from the appeals court back in April. On the, Busby was the guy who wrote it. It was about rejecting the immunity of Magnolia and Conroe.
Oh,
Yes.
So what's,
that's a room authority litigation, yes.
yeah, that's right. What's our interpretation of that?
I have to go back and look at it. I'm trying to remember. I think that was the one where where the city's walls, and it was supposed to go back to the golf course on the merit. That was about the government and unions, I believe. And so the river authority claimed that governmental immunity was placed, which I think was the river authority was successful. So all this up until now has been about that legal threshold legal issue. So now it has to go all the way back to the trial court.
Start over.
To start the trial on the merits. So that's what I took.
That and, Conroe may decide to appeal that even further. Because that was the ninth court that,
To the Texas Supreme Court, the last.
which was the ninth court. that-
Oh, the ninth court made that appeal. Oh, okay.
And then Conroe deciding whether they want to go to the Supreme Court.
Right.
With further delay.
Very good. Agenda item 13, consider an act on WWA trustee board committee structure and assignments. Attorney Yates, please.
I think this came up with the assignments for, I can't remember which committee it was, but the question was raised, I don't think you had raised about the process for appointments. And so that certainly as long as I've been involved with the Woodlands water districts has been at the discretion of the respective president, whether it's of the MUD or at the trustee level by the president of the board of trustees. So there's looking back, of course, the Woodlands goes back, the districts go back 90+ years. There's a separate policy for the audit committee because that's required under the water code to have an audit committee. So that's a standing committee, and the president appoints on that. I don't have any previous board action, but again, that could go back for 40 years of the board of trustees giving authorization at the trustee level and the various MUDs to make those committee appointments. I know there's been discussion about the public education committee and how it has become a very vital group in terms of being able to communicate things with the community. I don't think there's a mechanism to make that a standing committee because again, the audit committee by statute has to be in place. So by virtue of that, it's a standing committee. But to make the public education committee a standing committee, I think we would need board action on that. And talking with Eric, that may be a good reason to have a policy similar to what we have for just the audit committee to memorialize what is certainly as long as I've been involved in the course of dealing for both the MUDs and the trustees for how those committee appointments are handled.
So I was just reading the interlocal agreement and it just says the board
Correct.
creates the committees and I was looking for the,
Bylaws, I
the
think it's
detail.
bylaws, yeah. So again, the only one that's got a policy, to my knowledge, and looking back, is the audit committee, and the rest of them, since my involvement has been, historical precedent, and that could go back. I can't point you to a particular set of minutes because that's well before my involvement, but that could have been by a board action that would have been in the minutes, but not a separate bylaw. But I think if we're looking to do a permanent standing committee for public education, that would be a good opportunity to have a separate policy to memorialize what's been done historically for decades.
So what's the document for the audit committee that specifies the president makes those appointments?
I think it's been something. It's one of the FIN policies. I couldn't tell you the exact one.
This
It's
is-
look at the table of contents.
And that's contained where?
It's in the policy.
In the policy manual. So
Yeah.
there's a
There should be a table of contents.
contents. I have a copy of that. So
Yeah.
I can look in the audit, the policy manual.
Correct.
Okay, for that.
Correct.
And then what would determine the personnel committee, how that? I'm just looking at the agreement here. I mean,
Yeah.
the written document, and it says the power rests within the board of trustees. Well, there's only 10 of us. And we seem to be excluding some people from participating in these committees.
Any of these are brought to the board for a vote. It's a recommendation to try and streamline the process.
Say that again.
I think if I can do this. The board ultimately does vote as a unit, so nobody's being cut out of the equation, okay? These committees are to look at finer points of detail, open up areas of discussion, areas of question, as opposed to taking everyone's time and concern and what have you. And perhaps
So we bring it down from 10 to 4 then. Is there 4 people on the?
No, these committees only look at the finer points of a particular thing and make recommendation to the trustees, and the trustees vote.
They have no decision.
There's no decision authority in any of these committees whatsoever, other than to look at the finer points of the issue and then make recommendation to the trustees,
and perhaps
which will always have a vote.
with perhaps changes to the recommendation.
And there has been.
There's no minutes published though.
Want to join a committee?
What's that? I think. there's
Are you
people-
asking to
I
join
think
a
there's
committee?
People probably interested in joining committees.
There's going to be the outreach. That was what the name of that, the committee would,
Public education,
yeah,
PEC.
yeah.
Well, currently I think that there is a vacated positions on 2 committees currently by former trustee Kyle Lance. And so I think that there is an open position on the personnel committee and on the audit committee. The VEC, I'm not aware of any current.
It was the outreach group. No, I'm using the word
Oh.
outreach for the.
That's not gonna be a
That's
a
not
trustee
trustee,
committee.
okay.
No, that's
That's independent.
You said personnel on what? What's the second?
personnel audit and
Health education.
public education committee. So Public Education Committee was created in the fall of 2022. And coming out of that, they developed the strategic communication plan, which is what set forth the roadmap by which WWA now does our communication. All the various things that we've put in place over the last 18 months, essentially implementing it starting the beginning of last year. And everything that you see with what John reports on every month, Woodlands Water Weekly, all of the social media thing, all of the messaging that gets put out was originally developed, or at least created. The concepts of it were created through the PEC. Is my recommendation, as Brian suggested, that just in this world of growing need for communication, transparency, et cetera, and all of the great success that we've had coming out of the PEC, that I don't believe the communication should go anywhere, meaning I think that committee should be stood up as a standing committee and not an ad hoc. Personally, I see the legal difference between what they're called or what they are, but if we're gonna look at them in a standing capacity or an ad hoc capacity, I would suggest that this board consider looking at the PEC as a standing committee, because I think, for the reason I said, but again, I don't think communication is going anywhere. I think we've had some great success, and more now than ever are we going to need to continue that level of communication, if not more, whether it's with infrastructure renewal or whatever the topic is. We get a lot of great feedback from the community that we're now communicating them, that they now feel like they're getting information. They're starting, as John reported in the surveys, they're now starting to trust us more than perhaps years ago. So I think with that, that would be my recommendation, to consider that as a standing committee. So
Speaking of that, who wrote that article in the Woodlands magazine, Township magazine this month?
we all did, staff,
How old is it?
a month. What do you mean?
Well, it still had the $600 million and it's talked about the asbestos pipeline and all that. So it's, just curious.
Well, I don't have another number. Do you?
No, but that's my understanding that
That's the only numbers we have.
no, well, but the point is I thought the asbestos pipe had been put to bed for some period of time.
It's
And the
being,
590 million is hopefully going to be put to bed,
the need to.
Just
renew
curious, but-
Infrastructure in any, whatever capacity that it ends up happening, still needs to happen. Whether it's as big or little as has been prescribed up to now.
Okay.
But the evaluations, both the one that you approved tonight and the evaluation of the AC, those are the two big projects you're referring to,
Oh, they were mentioned in the article.
because they are both in review at this point.
Okay.
So,
There's a vacancy currently on the PEC committee.
no,
Say that again now.
there's not a vacancy on the PEC committee. What Q's referring to is coming out of our work with the PR consultant, which is helping, help develop the plan and the campaign for educating the public about aging infrastructure. Out of that campaign, whatever that ends up looking like, there will be an advisory group that is developed, and that's what.
Community advisory group.
Community advisory group,
That's it.
which would be made up of community members, board members, possible township, possible a village association folks, a wide variety of
Representative group of the
representative
community.
group of the community, correct? And so that's, anyone could really get on there. It can't be 100 people. It needs to be manageable. But yeah, the consultant is working on specifics as to size and what the demographic parameters should be. We can't have all 10 trustees or 10 board members or 10 village association members, but we'll have a mix of the community.
Do we want, this is an action item, so do we want to either postpone further action to follow up on this discussion and consideration until we get some of the additional information that you referenced, the FIN document, any other data that we may be able to have to craft a more complete motion? Because I don't know what a motion would be.
I think it's just,
Well, what would the action be?
Well, I guess,
the action is, the board, you've got two committees that I guess are understaffed. And we ought to consider it, and you ought to see who the directors wants to be on a particular committee. And kind of meld all that in and.
You're the historian now. You've got more tenure than anyone. I'm of the opinion, at least I was told by the former president that I came in, 3 years ago behind, that it was by invitation.
Yeah.
After
You appoint the.
invite first, and then if they accept.
But, but we don't know who wants to go on what committee. So you might, David said, new people want to be involved. You might find out, give whoever wants to be involved.
how
in
big are the
something.
committees?
Sorry?
Who's on them now? I don't even know.
The audit committee was myself, Paul Martin, and Kyle Mays. Kyle is no longer with us, so,
There's 3 people.
you know.
And that's been historically, again, at the discretion of the president, who has been appointing those committees, but technically it can't be more than, I wouldn't go more than 4.
By state statutes, we are required to have an audit committee.
Mm-hmm.
And what the audit committee does, nothing mysterious. We review the audit, review the budget of Woodlands Water, the SJRA Woodlands Division, and we review the audit of Woodlands Water. And make, in detail, and save you all the pain of going through that stuff. And then make recommendations. That's what the audit committee does. And any other project the president may request.
So the Thin 50 says, I've got it here, that hereby the audit committee will hereby appointed an audit committee of the board of directors, which is us, consisting initially of 2 members of the board of directors, us, appointed by the president of the board of directors. That's what Thin 50 says on, and it's per section 50.381 of the Texas Water Code that it's authorized by.
Then what?
Sorry?
50.301.
381, sorry, 50.
Did you get out?
50.381.
Think it. I'll have to go back and look. I thought it was 49 now, because they got solid.
Yeah, it's just that 1987
Yeah.
effective date of the policy.
So can you, next month, clarify that?
Well, so again, I think the audit committee was in a policy. My suggestion to the board, if there's action to be taken, would be to authorize preparation of a separate policy for committees in general, just to memorialize what's been done historically by practice and set out specifically what the standing committees are. So we have a reference document similar to the audit committee policy for other standing committees and memorialize how those committees were appointed at the discretion of the president.
And the personnel committee, who's on that?
Personnel committee, as I understood it, the president was by default, by definition, the ex officio chairman of that committee. Heretofore on that committee, Hugh Connet and Kyle Mays, and I believe Ron Wilson. Is that correct?
Obviously, we have, I know of people who are interested in being these committees. Yeah, there's vacancies and,
There's
we
a
can,
vacancy,
What's that?
yes. There is a vacancy.
I thought there was a vacancy.
Vacancy in each of the 2 committees.
Yeah.
There's one vacancy each of the 2 committees.
Yes.
And, I think those individuals,
Well,
I know, Brad Howe has expressed an interest and, Kent has.
Well, if I can repeat myself, it's by invitation, okay?
I understand.
It's not by,
Understand,
edict.
but the world is changing. Right?
oh,
That's hard to argue with after the last few days here. Yes, the
No.
world is changing.
I mean, is, that you guys had
I
a,
think you're saying that there's nothing set that's 3 or 4. Right, so 4 is arbitrary,
So
3
at this point, right, I think the action interested is to authorize preparation of a policy for committees that sets out what we've done historically for the appointment, as well as to specifically designate the public education committee and the personnel committee in addition to the audit committee as being standing committees.
We would need then to eliminate all non-trustee members of the Public Education Committee. Because an ad hoc committee can be comprised of a broad spectrum of people, which is what it is now.
Well, we can list that
Okay.
in the policy that
All right.
ad hoc committees, and the size of the committee is determined at the discretion of the president. The size of the committee, ad hoc committees can be comprised of trustees or alternates.
Mhm.
But I think it does need to be trustee and the alternates.
Oh,
Again, that
to
goes back-
complete the answer on the question of who's on the PEC, it's myself, Bob, and Hugh.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, just memorializing what we've had as
Yeah.
the president.
For voting purposes, the
It's
only
only
people who are allowed
trustees.
to cast votes for acceptance or rejection of a motion to the board are the trustees that are the members of any of the committees.
Right, none of the committees have action because they don't have a majority.
It's a recommendation.
A recommendation. Further discussion, sir?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Eric. Agenda item 14, receive the general manager's report.
Right. Really just wanted to talk about, a little bit about give you some updates on what we've been doing over the last couple of days with the storm. As SJ reported, the water and sewer facilities continued to be in operation. We had individuals, we had the office open on Monday. We closed it late morning, and then we're closed yesterday, opened back up at 10 a.m. once we knew that today. Throughout the last 48 hours, or whatever it is now, we had staff in the field addressing issues. We had folks tooled up with the equipment necessary to be able to receive customer calls at our homes. And then we were able to distribute out staff to go deal with the issues in the field. Most of the calls that we've been getting are to turn off the water at a house because a tree hit a roof and broke a line, or because a tree fell over, and as it fell over, the root ball pulled up the line and broke it. And so they're asking us to come out and turn it off so it stops flowing on their side. That's been most of the work in the field. So we too had on-call folks 24/7 over the last few days. And then you saw today, we sent out an email to our customers, just reassuring them that not only the water was safe, but also that it was uninterrupted during the storm. And we did that from John's stuck in Seattle. He was on vacation. So he and I have been working from him in the hotel room and me going back and forth working on the messaging. So it's kind of been an all hands on deck. We had behind the scenes kind of a text messaging group because emails weren't working and phones weren't working. And, we all tried to get, a way to communicate. I say we, the leadership team here at WWA. So I'm going to be looking at, we're going to assess how we did internally, what we did, what can we improve on? Are there some processes in place? This is my first run at a natural disaster type situation here at WWA. So I'd like to see what we think we did well, what we think we can improve, and we'll assess that in the weeks to come. So I think everything went pretty well as it could be expected. From what I saw, the Woodlands and just areas north got hit harder than anything. Any other areas in town or around town, it's kind of depended on where you were, but we were certainly on that leading dirty edge of the storm. For a Cat 1, that was about as strong as I've seen it in my life here, living here all my life. But I think things went pretty well. And I would also offer or ask for any insight that y'all have from yourself or the community on how you or they feel that WWA handled the last 48 hours or last 72 hours, whatever it is. So send that my way if you have it.
Before you leave on that, did you have any conversation with the township or the resectory?
Not specifically.
I did with Chris News.
You did?
Yeah, I just.
Okay.
Yeah, we were communicating with the township, with Entergy to try to get kind of some idea of when we could expect things to be moving. I was out, Mike and I both drove most of the Woodlands probably between noon and 4 on Monday. As soon as I knew the eye was kind of past us, I hit the road and looked at all the damage. We assessed I've called them, you've heard me call them the drainage hotspots. I hit all those right around 1 o'clock, probably just after the storm was kind of slowing down on Monday, and to just see what it looked like and all the drainage. Of course, this probably, I think we can all concede that this wasn't a rainstorm. This was more of a windstorm. Hurricanes are either or both, I guess. And I got 8 inches just north. Some of the Woodlands got 8 inches, but it was spread long enough that And a couple of the hotspots were close. You could see water lines up the yards and you could, typical what we've seen, but I haven't heard any structure flooding or house flooding. So that was good.
On that same, how'd the building handle it? You put a new roof on, how are the windows? I mean, did you have any damage within this structure?
Minimal for the amount of wind and rain. We did have some water come in through a couple of windows, I think years ago. We dealt with, the organization dealt with a lot of window leaks a decade ago or so, but I think there was some minimal.
Because it was coming sideways, there were
Mhm.
spots that we didn't recognize on a normal rain event.
Mhm.
As it was coming sideways, you could see it coming in at the seams.
Yeah.
The roof was money well spent and
Yeah,
necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the area that causes this and right outside of here that is pretty bad to damage from the past, that did not leak this time.
Good job.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, we're kind of filled the gaps.
Thank you.
Last two other items, we hadn't publicly shared this with you yet, but this will be Mike Mooney's last meeting, trustee meeting to attend. He is retiring. Has put in his retirement notice, and his last day will be August 1st. So I know this is a personnel issue, but I feel like I can at least share that in open session. We are looking for a replacement. I have interviewed a handful of folks or a couple folks, and I will likely move to try to keep him on at least on a part-time basis to try to get me through the transition on the new individual. So we'll work through those details through the fall as soon as I can get someone in place. So working on it. Mike has put in his anniversary was 20-year anniversary just hit a couple weeks ago. And as I have found in my first 18 months or so, has been incredibly valuable to help me, incredibly valuable to what he's done for this organization. And so it's going to be a huge loss for me and all the work that he puts in, and it makes my job a lot easier on the boots on the ground. So we will definitely miss him for sure. And we'll have more opportunity to say goodbye, but just wanted to let you know that will be occurring as of August 1. Related to that, Woodlands Water has a seat on the GRP committee as part of the GRP through the SRA. Mike is the representative that sits in that seat. And so I think there's time for one more meeting in July, and then doesn't necessarily mean that he can't continue. You could decide that, or we need to decide who is going to fill that seat, because WWA does have a seat at that table on that committee. So they basically, if you don't know, their job is to make recommendations to the board, to the SRA board on recommendations on how the GRP is managed.
It's an advisory position. It's not a voting.
Correct.
It's advisory. Is that right, Mike?
They vote, but it's advisory vote.
So something to think about. Need to make that call on who fills that seat.
It would be a Woodlands Water employee.
Does not have to be.
Okay.
I understand.
Can be anybody that the board.
Yeah.
Wants.
Correct. That's my understanding.
Interesting.
No action tonight on that. We'll probably put it on the agenda for next month because we do need to fill that seat. Whoever that is.
Do you think you'll have any recommendations?
I can, sure. And I would ask for your insight as well. If you've got any feelings towards it, happy to put that on the list. And let's see, what else did I have? I think with that's all I had tonight.
Very good, sir.
We will be, one thing, we will be going over budget WWA budget things over the next couple months. We did not have any committee meetings. That's the next item on the agenda. But we will need to have probably a audit committee and personnel committee meetings here pretty quick. And PEC was canceled as well, so to go over some of those things.
Eric, can you give us an update on the software conversion process and the timeline?
The rollout is still scheduled for September 9th. And right now we are going through testing. And so basically it's a mock testing to kind of do, I don't know that we're really calling it a soft start. There will be a soft start, I guess, probably in August.
Yeah.
But we're doing multiple rounds of testing we've converted all the data over to the new software, and we're kind of doing testing on how that conversion has gone.
Is a consultant involved in that process? Okay, so what are there metrics that you're measuring them by? I mean, I've been through these conversions where you come to 9.9 and they say, oh, well, we're not ready. Or, because of these problems, we're not ready. So can you give us some assurance that all the milestones are being ticked off and you're on schedule? And
There's a project plan, but certain things need to be met.
and
But we're
And you're on
schedule
schedule.
so far.
Correct. Yeah, so the project plan was set out by the software company that owns the software that we're working with. And I think it was almost a 9-month
Yeah.
process. And we're just going right down that projected line.
I request that this be a standard item in the manager's report until the conversion is complete. Further discussion for General Manager Peterson. Okay, agenda item 15, ad hoc committee reports, staff or ad hoc committee report updates. There was no meeting of the personnel committee. Trustee Wilson.
Committee did not meet. I heard Eric say the budget's coming.
Yeah.
And the PEC.
We had to cancel the meeting on advice, discussion with General Manager Peterson.
Okay, so no updates on that. Very good. Okay, I think that ends that. Is there any questions on that? Those three items? Agenda item 16, recess is not required. Reconvene, discuss matters for placement on future agendas.
I'd like to, for next month that we discuss the One Water Task Force, the makeup of the task force and also funding of it. It's, the township's involved in it. We had a representative from Dan Crenshaw's office at the last meeting. So I think this could be a very meaningful task force and could help the residents quite a bit. But we need to look at how do we fund it, and then do we pick a leader for it also, which is going to take money. So I'd like to put it on an agenda so we can discuss it.
Very good. Anyone else? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.